The morning sun rose slowly over Austin, Texas, washing the streets in warm amber light. The city was already waking, coffee brewing, traffic humming, joggers crossing the bridge over Lady Bird Lake. For most people, it was just another Tuesday. For Michael Cooper, it was another chance to keep going. At 54, Michael's world moved slower than most. His body had limits, but his spirit didn't. He rolled his wheelchair out of his small apartment near South Congress Avenue, greeted his elderly neighbor with a smile, and began his daily route through the neighborhood. The wheels of his motorized chair hummed softly as he passed the same bakery, the same gas station, the same cafe where people sat scrolling through their phones. He waved to everyone. Not everyone waved back, but he didn't mind. He'd stopped expecting the world to notice goodness. He just chose to be good anyway. Michael's mornings followed a quiet rhythm. He stopped first at the park, where he picked up plastic bottles left on the grass. Then he crossed the street to the local shelter, where he helped arrange donated clothes. By 9 o'clock, he was at Mary's coffee spot, a small cafe that smelled like roasted heaven. Mary herself, a kind woman in her 60s, spotted him through the window and smiled. "There's my favorite firefighter," she called as he entered. Michael chuckled softly. "You know I haven't fought a fire in 15 years. Mary poured his coffee anyway. "Doesn't change who you are, Mike." He nodded, grateful. "Maybe not, but it sure changed how fast I move." They laughed together. He took his coffee, 1 sugar, no cream, and parked by the window where he could watch the city wake up. Outside, life hurried by. Inside, peace lingered around him like an aura. Mary often said that Michael carried stillness with him, the kind that doesn't come from giving up, but from surviving what should have ended you. When people saw him for the first time, they saw the chair before the man. But those who stopped to talk saw something else, the kindness in his eyes, the way he listened like every word mattered, and how his smile carried no bitterness. He lived alone, but he was never lonely. He volunteered at the Austin Community Center, taught first aid classes on weekends, and visited nursing homes whenever he could. People called him Mr. Cooper, the kids, Coach Mike. He never corrected them when they said sir. To most, he was invisible, just another man in a wheelchair moving through the noise of the city. But to a few, he was a quiet miracle. Around mid-morning, he left the cafe and headed toward Bridgeview High School, where the sound of laughter filled the air. Groups of teenagers gathered by the corner store nearby, backpacks slung, earbuds in, eyes full of the kind of confidence only youth can afford. Among them were Ethan Miller, Cole Ramirez, and Ryan Carter, 3 inseparable friends, 17, loud and reckless. They were good kids underneath it all, but life hadn't yet taught them when to stop laughing, and Michael, unknowingly, was about to become their favorite joke. As he approached the intersection, the boys noticed him. Cole elbowed Ethan. "Hey, check it out. NASCAR's got a new model." Ethan smirked. "Yo, Hot Wheels, you late for the race." Ryan laughed nervously. "Dude, stop." Ethan ignored him. He walked closer to the curb, pretending to push imaginary wheels with exaggerated arm movements. "Careful, man. You're gonna burn some rubber." Michael looked up at them and smiled gently. "Morning, boys." That was it. No sarcasm, no anger, just kindness. But kindness has a way of making the cruel uncomfortable. Ethan frowned, unsatisfied. "Yo, do you even need a driver's license for that thing?" Michael chuckled softly. "Only if I'm racing you." Ryan laughed for real this time, but quickly stopped when Ethan shot him a glare. Michael's voice remained calm. "You boys take care, all right? The world moves fast. Don't let it make you mean." He rolled past them, unbothered, disappearing down the street. Cole shook his head. "Weird dude." Ethan smirked. "Yeah, I swear, if I ever end up like that, just shoot me." Ryan's smile faded. He looked down, uneasy. Later that day, Michael arrived at the community center. He greeted the receptionist, then began setting up chairs for a CPR class. The room was empty, quiet, except for the sound of his wheelchair's motor and the hum of the old air conditioner. On the wall hung a framed photo, Austin Fire Department, 2008. In it, a younger Michael stood proudly in uniform, helmet under his arm, grin wide and fearless. The caption read, "Service above self." He stared at it for a moment, remembering the fire, the screams, the falling beam, the heat, and then nothing. He still remembered the smell of smoke, the way his legs gave out when the ceiling came down, the hospital lights when he woke up. They told him he'd never walk again. He told them, "Then I'll just have to find a new way to move." And he did. That night, as he rolled home under the orange glow of streetlights, he passed the same corner where the boys had been. They were gone, but their laughter still echoed faintly in his mind. He smiled to himself, whispering, "You'll learn someday, boys. Life has a way of teaching what respect can't." The wind picked up slightly, leaves scattered across the pavement. He adjusted his jacket and kept moving. Every streetlight he passed reflected off the chrome of his chair, each one like a silent medal he didn't need anyone to see. The next morning, he woke early again. Same routine, same streets, same cafe. But as he sat by the window sipping his coffee, he noticed something different. Across the street, near the corner store, the three boys were there again, Ethan, Cole, and Ryan, laughing, shoving each other, being boys. Then Ethan spotted him. He nudged Cole. "There's our guy." Cole grinned. "Round two?" They started walking his way. Mary saw them through the glass and frowned. "Mike, you want me to—" He shook his head. "No, Mary. Let them talk. Maybe they just need someone to listen." The boys approached the window, smirking. Ethan tapped on the glass. Michael turned his chair, smiling politely. Ethan leaned close. "Hey, man, how fast does that thing go downhill?" Michael chuckled. "Fast enough to get away from bad decisions." Ryan laughed again, but Cole filmed quietly on his phone. He whispered, "This is gonna blow up on TikTok." Mary stepped outside, hands on her hips. "You boys got something better to do," Ethan scoffed. "Relax, we're just talking." Michael raised a hand gently. "It's all right, Mary?" Then, to the boys, "You want to race me sometime? We'll make it fair. You carry 50 pounds of regret each." Cole laughed despite himself. Even Ethan cracked a smile. Michael grinned. "See, you can laugh without hurting someone." For a second, there was silence. Then Ethan shrugged, pretending not to care. "Whatever, man." They walked off, the laughter fading behind them. Mary shook her head. "Why do you let them mess with you like that?" Michael took a slow sip of coffee, because one day they'll need someone to show them what grace looks like. Might as well start the lesson early. Outside, the sun climbed higher. Cars passed, birds sang, life went on. And in the middle of that busy Austin morning, a man who couldn't walk reminded the world what it meant to stand tall. The streets of East Austin came alive after school. Skateboards clattered against sidewalks, music spilled from car speakers, and kids gathered at the corner store that sold energy drinks and bad decisions for $1.99. That corner was their world, their little kingdom of noise and laughter, and every afternoon 3 boys ruled it: Ethan Miller, Cole Ramirez, and Ryan Carter, 17, restless, and too young to understand that confidence without compassion is just another kind of weakness. Ethan was the loud one, the self-proclaimed leader, tall, athletic, and full of opinions he hadn't earned yet. His father was a corporate lawyer who was never home, and his mother tried to buy his attention with credit cards. He wore brand new sneakers, drove his dad's second car, and carried around a permanent smirk that said, "Nothing can touch me." Cole was the funny one, a joker, always filming everything on his phone. He had 2 older brothers in the military and a mother who worked double shifts as a nurse. No one ever made time to watch him grow up. So he filled the silence with laughter, the kind that hurts other people before it can hurt you. Ryan was the quiet one, the follower, the one with a conscience buried deep beneath fear. He lived with his grandmother since his parents' divorce. He wasn't cruel by nature, just afraid of being the next target if he didn't laugh along. Together, they looked like trouble, but separately, they were just 3 kids trying to feel seen. That afternoon, they sat on the curb outside the corner store, passing a bag of chips, arguing about nothing. Cole scrolled through his phone. "Dude, that video from yesterday got almost 5,000 views. Ethan grinned. "Told you. People love stupid stuff." Ryan frowned. "You really uploaded that?" Cole nodded. "Of course. It's just a harmless joke. The guy didn't even care." Ethan leaned back, laughing. "Yeah, man." He smiled the whole time. "I think he liked the attention." Ryan looked away. He remembered that moment, Michael Cooper rolling by, calm as a saint, while they mocked him like it was sport. Something about that man's eyes stuck with him. There was no anger there, only peace. He didn't know why that bothered him more than if the man had shouted back. Across the street, Michael's silhouette appeared again, steady, slow, familiar. Ethan noticed first. Speak of the devil. Cole pulled out his phone instantly. "Round 2? Ryan hesitated. "Guys, seriously, let it go." Ethan grinned. "Relax. We're just having fun." Cole started filming. Michael rolled past, nodding politely as usual. "Afternoon, boys." Ethan smirked. "Hey, you ever tried off-roading in that thing?" Michael chuckled. "I used to. Now I just stay in my lane." Ryan's lips twitched. He wanted to smile, but guilt stopped him. Cole laughed. "Yo, that was kinda deep." Michael smiled gently. "Life gets deep when you stop living shallow." Ethan rolled his eyes. "All right, philosopher, chill." Michael just nodded. "You too, son." He kept going, disappearing down the street. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Ryan finally muttered, "Why do you keep picking on him?" Ethan shrugged. "Why not? He's fine. Dude's tougher than he looks." Cole added, "It's not serious, man." "He doesn't care." Ryan shook his head. "Yeah, maybe, but I do." Ethan gave him a long look. "Then don't hang around if you can't take a joke." Ryan went quiet. He hated how small his voice felt around them. He hated that being kind felt like weakness here. That night, Ethan went home to an empty house. The living room was spotless, the fridge full, the silence heavy. A note on the counter read, "Working late. Dinner's in the fridge. Proud of you, Dad." He threw the note away. He didn't even look at what was inside the fridge. He went up to his room, turned on music, and scrolled through the comments on Cole's video. "Ha ha ha. Savage. That guy's expression, the bro's gonna need a turbo upgrade." Each comment was a digital pat on the back, validation from strangers he'd never meet, and for a moment, it felt good. But when the music faded and the laughter online quieted, all that was left was the same empty house and the same hollow feeling. He didn't know it yet, but what he called power was just loneliness in disguise. Meanwhile, Cole sat in his room with the lights off, replaying the same video he'd uploaded. He zoomed in on Michael's face at the end, the smile, that calm, unshaken smile. Something about it bothered him too. He whispered to himself, why didn't he get mad? Then he scrolled past it, laughing it off again, but the question stayed. Ryan couldn't sleep that night. He kept hearing Michael's voice in his head. "You're better than this, boys. You just don't know it yet." He sat on his bed, staring at the glow-in-the-dark cross his grandmother had hung above the door. He whispered, maybe he's right. The next morning, the three met again at their usual spot. Same jokes. Same noise. But something felt different. Ryan was quiet. Ethan noticed. "You good, man?" Ryan shrugged. "Yeah, just tired." Cole handed him a soda. "You're always tired lately." Ryan looked across the street, half expecting to see Michael again. But the man wasn't there, and somehow that made him feel worse. Later that week, their paths crossed again, this time near the park. Michael was helping an old woman load groceries into her car. Ethan whispered, "There's our guy." Cole laughed. "Come on, one last video." Ryan stepped in front of them. "No! Enough!" Ethan frowned. "What's your deal?" Ryan snapped, louder this time. "He's not hurting anyone. Leave him alone." Ethan's grin faltered. Cole lowered the phone. For the first time, they all went silent. Across the lot, Michael turned, noticing them. He smiled, raised a hand in greeting, and went back to helping the woman. That simple act, that gentle wave, felt heavier than any argument. Ryan turned to his friends. "You see that? That's strength." Ethan looked away, uncomfortable. Cole shoved his phone into his pocket. "Whatever, man, let's go." They left quietly, but something had shifted. The seed had been planted. That night, rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavy, washing the streets clean. Ethan lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, hearing thunder roll outside. For some reason, his thoughts kept drifting back to Michael Cooper, the way he smiled through the mockery, the way he moved like a man who knew peace was louder than pride. He whispered to himself, "What's that guy got that I don't?" The answer came in silence, and in that silence, the story's first spark of redemption was lit. Everyone in Austin knew of Michael Cooper, but very few knew who he really was. To most people, he was just a polite man in a wheelchair who always smiled, who helped strangers, who lived a quiet life. But behind that calm, behind those eyes, lived a story that carried both fire and faith. A story that had broken him and built him all over again. It was 15 years earlier, in the summer of 2009. The heat in Texas was merciless that year, the kind that wrapped the city in a haze of gold and sweat. Michael was 39, a lieutenant at Austin Fire Department Station 14, husband to Rebecca, father to a little girl named Lily. He was strong, confident, proud of his work, proud of the men he led. His life had meaning. Every call, every rescue, it was proof that his body was made for purpose. That night, around 8:30, the alarm rang through the firehouse. A residential fire, 2 adults and 1 child trapped inside. Without hesitation, Michael threw on his gear and shouted for his team to roll out. Sirens howled as the truck cut through the city streets, the world outside flashing red with urgency. "Remember," Michael said to his crew as they turned onto Walnut Creek, "people over property, every time." They nodded. He had said those words 100 times before. He didn't know that this time they'd be the last words he'd ever say while standing on his own 2 feet. The fire was already a monster when they arrived. Smoke poured through the windows, flames clawed up the walls like living things hungry for more. Neighbors stood outside screaming for help, pointing toward the 2nd floor. "Kid's still inside!" someone yelled. Michael's instincts took over. He grabbed the hose, pulled his mask down, and ran toward the door. The heat hit like a wave, but he didn't stop. He pushed through the smoke, voice echoing through the radio. "Team 2, back entry, I'm going up." The stairs creaked and groaned beneath him, the air thick, suffocating, full of that burnt sweetness of melting plastic. He could barely see, but he heard it, a faint, terrified cry. A child. "Hold on, buddy, I'm coming," he shouted. He kicked open the bedroom door and saw her, a little girl hiding under a desk, eyes wide and wet. He ran to her, pulled off his glove and touched her face. "It's okay, sweetheart, I got you." He wrapped her in a blanket and lifted her into his arms. Every breath burned his lungs, but he didn't slow down. He turned toward the stairs, and that's when the sound came. A deep, sharp crack, like thunder inside the house. The ceiling above him collapsed. He turned, shielding the girl with his body, pushing her toward the hallway as a wooden beam crashed down across his back. The impact threw him to the floor. The world went white with pain, then black. When he opened his eyes, everything was still. He couldn't move. Smoke filled his mask. He could hear his radio buzzing, voices yelling his name, but his body didn't respond. He tried to roll over, but his legs felt like stone. He tried again. Nothing. Through the haze, he saw the child crawling toward the door, coughing, crying, and somehow, even from where he lay broken, Michael managed to smile. She was alive. That was all that mattered. Moments later, his crew found him. They pulled him out through the front door, laid him on the ground, and ripped off his helmet. His chief knelt beside him. "Mike, stay with me." Michael blinked, his voice barely a whisper. "Did we get the kid?" The chief nodded, eyes full of tears. "Yeah, we got her." Michael smiled faintly. "Then we're good." And then the pain came, deep, consuming, endless. He woke up 3 days later in the hospital, wrapped in silence and machines. The doctor stood by the bed, face solemn, hands folded in front of him. "Mr. Cooper, the beam crushed your lower spine. I'm sorry. You'll never walk again." For a moment, Michael just stared at the ceiling. He tried to move his legs. Nothing. Tried again. Still nothing. He wanted to scream, but no sound came. He just closed his eyes. When his wife, Rebecca, entered the room, she tried to smile. He could see the love in her eyes, but also the fear. She held his hand, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "You're still my hero." He didn't feel like one. The first few months were a blur of therapy, frustration, and quiet despair. He watched the world shrink to the size of hospital corridors and walls painted in shades of beige. The man who once carried people out of burning buildings now needed help getting out of bed. One evening, a young nurse came in to check his vitals. She noticed the Bible on his bedside table, untouched. She picked it up and placed it gently on his lap. "Your wife said this used to be your favorite book," she said softly. Michael stared at it for a long time. He hadn't opened it in years. Firefighters don't pray much, they act. But that night he opened it. His eyes fell on a verse he'd never really noticed before. "When you pass through the fire, I will be with you, and the flames shall not consume you." Isaiah 43:2. He laughed through his tears. "Guess you meant that literally, huh?" And for the first time in months, he prayed, not asking for legs, not asking for escape, just for peace. Recovery was slow, painful, lonely. Rebecca tried to stay strong, but the strain was too much. Within a year, she left. No fights, no shouting, just quiet exhaustion. She took their daughter, promising to visit, but life has a way of breaking promises gently over time. Michael didn't blame her. He couldn't. He just learned to move on his own again, differently. He learned to drive a modified van. He learned to cook with one hand while balancing on the edge of his chair. He learned to live without pitying himself. But most of all, he learned that purpose doesn't die when the body breaks, only when the heart does. He began volunteering at the community center, helping with CPR classes, visiting burn victims, mentoring kids from the fire cadet program. People admired his optimism. They said he was inspiring. He never thought of it that way. He just figured if he could still breathe, he could still serve. On Sundays, he'd roll into the small church on the east side of town. The pastor always paused his sermon to greet him. "Good to see you, Brother Cooper." Michael would smile and reply, "Still standing where it counts." The congregation would laugh softly, but some of them cried too. Over the years, he built a new rhythm. Morning coffee with Mary, helping at the shelter, smiling at strangers, becoming invisible by choice, but useful in quiet ways. He no longer needed the sirens, the uniform, or the applause. He had peace. The kind of peace that only comes after you've lost everything and realized you still have enough. Sometimes, late at night, when the city was asleep, Michael would roll out onto his balcony and watch the lights of Austin flicker below. He'd remember the fire, the smell, the noise, the heat, and wonder why he survived when so many didn't. He never got an answer, but he stopped asking. Because maybe the answer wasn't for him. Maybe it was for the people who would cross his path later, the broken kids, the angry ones, the lost ones who laughed at things they didn't understand. He would think about them, smile, and whisper, "Maybe that's why I'm still here." And somewhere deep down, he knew. The man who had once saved lives with his legs was now meant to save hearts with his grace. The following week, the summer heat returned with a vengeance. Downtown Austin buzzed with the sound of air conditioners, street musicians, and teenagers who had nothing better to do. Among them, Ethan, Cole, and Ryan, always together, always loud, drifted between boredom and bad ideas. By now, teasing Michael Cooper had become their routine. It wasn't planned, it wasn't even interesting anymore. It was just easy, like bullying the weather, something constant, familiar, and safe. That Thursday afternoon, they spotted him again outside Mary's coffee spot. He was parked beside the curb, picking up a piece of trash someone had dropped, carefully placing it in a small bag attached to his chair. Ethan grinned. "Man, he's like the city's janitor on wheels." Cole lifted his phone. "Round 3, Ryan sighed. "Come on, guys, seriously?" Ethan shrugged. "What?" "We're just messing around," Ryan muttered. "You said that last time, too." But they didn't stop. They never did. Ethan cupped his hands around his mouth. "Hey, Superman, you dropped your cape." Michael turned slowly, surprised but calm, his eyes kind as always. He smiled softly. "Afternoon, boys." His tone disarmed them for a split second, polite, patient, fatherly almost. Cole snorted. "You out here saving the planet one bottle at a time?" Michael chuckled lightly. "Trying to, son. Somebody's got to clean up after the heroes who don't pick up after themselves." Ryan covered his face, trying not to smile. Cole laughed despite himself. Ethan frowned. He didn't like losing the upper hand. Michael rolled closer. Not threatening, just present. "You boys from Bridgeview High, right?" Ethan nodded, skeptical. "Yeah, why?" "I volunteer there sometimes. CPR and safety workshops. Good school." Cole smirked. "Yeah, maybe for the walking crowd." Michael smiled again, the kind of smile that made cruelty look small. "You know, legs help you move, but they don't help you grow." Ethan tilted his head. "What's that supposed to mean?" Michael gestured toward the street. "Means you can run all day and still go nowhere if your heart's pointed the wrong direction." The boys went quiet. They didn't know how to answer that. Michael looked at each of them, one by one, not judging, just seeing. He'd looked at a lot of people that way over the years, the broken, the bitter, the ones hiding behind laughter. He recognized it instantly. Ryan's eyes flickered downward. Cole lowered his phone. Even Ethan felt something shift, though he'd never admit it. But pride dies hard, especially in the young. "Whatever, man," Ethan muttered. He picked up his drink and, with a smirk, flicked the rest of it toward Michael's chair. The liquid splashed across the wheel and dripped down onto the pavement. Ryan gasped. "Ethan!" Cole froze, his hand halfway to his pocket. Michael looked down at the mess, then back up at the boy. No anger, no raised voice, just calm. He reached into his bag, pulled out a napkin, and began wiping the spill carefully. "It's okay," he said softly. "Takes more than that to rust me." Ethan laughed, but it was hollow now, the kind of laugh that sounded like a cover. For guilt. Michael finished cleaning, threw the napkin in the trash, and looked up. "You're better than this, boys. You just don't know it yet." The words landed like stones, not hard enough to wound, just heavy enough to stay. Ryan whispered, "He's not wrong." Ethan rolled his eyes. "He's just playing the saint." But even he didn't believe himself anymore. They watched as Michael turned and continued down the sidewalk, his chair humming quietly, his head high. He didn't look back. That silence, that refusal to hate, it bothered them more than any insult could have. Later that evening, Ryan replayed the scene in his mind. The look on Michael's face wasn't anger. It was disappointment, and somehow that hurt worse. He lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, hearing the same words over and over. "You're better than this." He didn't know why, but it felt personal, like the man had looked straight through him, past the noise, past the jokes, past the fear, and seen who he could be. Ethan's night went differently. He told himself he didn't care. He scrolled through social media, laughed at videos, tried to forget. But every few minutes, the memory came back. The way Michael just wiped the soda off his chair without anger. The way he looked at him like a father looks at a son who's lost his way. That quiet strength unnerved him. No one had ever met his cruelty with calm before. People either shouted or walked away. But Michael had stood, or rather, sat, and faced it with grace. And Ethan hated that grace, because it made him see himself clearly. The next afternoon, Michael returned to the community center as usual. He spent hours teaching kids basic safety tips, showing them how to check a pulse, how to perform chest compressions, how to call for help in an emergency. When class ended, one of the little boys tugged his sleeve. "Mr. Cooper," the child asked, "how come you're always smiling?" Michael smiled wider. "Because smiles are free, kiddo. And sometimes they're the only thing you've got to give." The boy nodded, thoughtful. Michael patted his shoulder. "Remember, you can't control what happens to you, but you can always choose how you respond." He didn't realize that those exact words would echo in his mind later, when choosing how to respond would mean choosing between fear and sacrifice. That weekend, Ethan, Cole, and Ryan met at their usual spot again. They didn't plan to run into Michael this time, but life rarely asks for permission to teach a lesson. They saw him across the street, near the bus stop, helping a woman who had dropped her groceries. Ethan started to turn away, but Ryan stopped him. "Wait, what? Just watch." Michael knelt slightly in his chair, using his arms to reach the scattered apples, his movements careful, patient. The woman thanked him, tears in her eyes. He smiled, said something they couldn't hear, and then just kept rolling down the street like it was nothing. Cole exhaled. "Man, he does that for everyone." Ethan crossed his arms, pretending not to care. "Yeah, well, maybe that's his job or something." Ryan looked at him. "No one pays you to be kind." Ethan didn't respond. For the first time, silence settled between them. No jokes, no laughter, just thought. Ryan finally said, "You ever wonder why someone like him isn't angry?" Cole shrugged. "Maybe he's crazy. Maybe he's stronger than all of us," Ryan said quietly. Ethan looked away. He didn't want to admit it, but Ryan was right. And deep down, a part of him, a small, buried part, envied that strength. That night, rain rolled over Austin again. The air smelled like wet pavement and thunder. Michael sat by his window, sipping tea, watching the storm. He whispered a quiet prayer for those boys, for whatever they're running from. He didn't hate them. He couldn't. He'd seen too much pain in his own reflection to condemn someone else's. He smiled faintly and turned off the light. Across town, Ethan lay in bed, restless. The rain against his window sounded like the echo of guilt. He replayed the moment he'd thrown the drink, the look in Michael's eyes, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Shame. He didn't know it yet, but storms have a way of washing more than just the streets. They wash hearts too, and somewhere out there, the man he had mocked was already praying for him. The Texas sky had a way of changing its mind. One moment, It was painted in gold and blue, calm, endless, forgiving. The next, it was iron grey, full of thunder that growled like a warning. That night, the city of Austin waited under that kind of sky. The air was thick, restless. You could smell the storm before it came. Michael Cooper sat by his window, watching the clouds move like slow tides above the skyline. He loved storms, always had. He said they reminded him that even chaos could be beautiful if you knew where to stand. He glanced at the photo on his wall, the one from his firefighter days. He looked younger there, full of muscle and certainty, standing in front of a burning building with a grin that didn't yet know what loss felt like. He smiled softly at his own reflection now. Older, wiser, weaker in body, maybe, but stronger where it counted. He whispered to himself, "All right, Lord, let's see what tonight's lesson is." He grabbed his jacket, slipped it over his shoulders, and wheeled toward the door. Evening was his favorite time to roll through the city. The streets quieted down, the lights shimmered against the wet pavement, and people were too busy rushing home to notice the man in the chair who prayed for them as they passed. Across town, Ethan, Cole, and Ryan were finishing dinner at a small burger place near Riverside Drive. Rain tapped against the windows. Thunder cracked in the distance. Ryan glanced outside. "We should probably head home before it gets bad." Ethan leaned back, smirking. "It's just rain." "You scared of a little water?" Cole grinned. "Yeah, Captain Courage doesn't melt." Ryan rolled his eyes. "Yeah, but your mom's car might if you crash it." Ethan tossed a fry at him. "Relax, man. We'll be fine." But even he could feel the weight in the air, that strange silence before a storm that makes the world feel like it's holding its breath. They left the diner, pulling their hoods up as the rain began to fall harder. Lightning flashed over the Lady Bird Lake Bridge, illuminating the water below. Cole raised his phone. "Man, this would look sick for a TikTok. Storm vibes, bro." Ethan laughed. "Do it. Let's go to the bridge." Ryan hesitated. "Nah, it's slippery, dude." But they were already walking, half running, shouting over the rain. At the same time, a few blocks away, Michael crossed the intersection near Trinity Street, his wheelchair tires leaving small tracks in the puddles. He always carried a small flashlight clipped to the armrest for safety. It cut a thin beam through the rain, steady and calm. As he rolled down the sidewalk, he passed a car pulled over to the side. Hood open, steam rising. A young man stood there, drenched and frustrated. "You all right, son?" Michael asked. The man sighed. "Battery's dead and my phone's out. Can't call anyone." Michael smiled. "Well, you found the right person. I don't move fast, but I know people." He handed the man his phone. "Here, call for a tow." The man looked surprised. "You sure?" "Son, if I was going to keep things to myself, I'd still have legs." The man laughed, thanked him, and took the phone. Michael waited patiently until help arrived, then waved as the car was loaded onto the truck. By then, the rain had turned from drizzle to downpour. He pulled his hood up and whispered, "Looks like the storm's in a hurry tonight." On the other side of town, the boys reached the bridge. The rain was heavy now, the wind cutting through their jackets, but they didn't care. Ethan leaned over the railing, shouting against the wind. "This is crazy!" Cole laughed, filming everything. "Say something epic, man." Ethan grinned at the camera. "If I die tonight, tell my mom she still owes me $20. Ryan shook his head. "You're idiots, both of you." Lightning split the sky again, so bright it turned everything white for a moment. When the thunder followed, it rolled through their chests like an earthquake. Cole turned his camera toward the street, the reflection of headlights cutting through sheets of rain. He laughed. "Man, people still driving in this?" Ethan shrugged. "Texans don't stop for anything." At that exact moment, Michael turned onto Riverside Drive, heading home. The bridge loomed ahead, the one he crossed almost every night. He could see 3 silhouettes up there through the rain. 3 boys. He didn't know who they were yet, but something in his gut tightened. He slowed down, eyes narrowing. One of them leaned over the rail too far, too careless, too close. The wind howled. The rain came down in waves. Michael muttered, "Lord, don't let that be what I think it is." He pressed forward. On the bridge, Ryan turned, uneasy. "Guys, seriously, let's go. This is getting dangerous." Ethan rolled his eyes. "Relax, man. We're fine." Cole grinned. "One more shot, then we're out." He stepped backward, aiming his phone toward Ethan, the headlights behind them glowing through the fog. What none of them noticed was the car coming too fast around the corner. Tires hissed on the slick road. The driver, blinded by rain, swerved to avoid another car and lost control. The vehicle fishtailed. Headlights flashed. Brakes screamed. Ethan froze. Cole shouted, "Dude, move!" Ryan pushed Ethan, but his foot slipped on the soaked pavement. In that instant, the one heartbeat between life and death, Michael saw everything. From the far end of the bridge, he saw the car spin, saw the boys frozen like deer, saw the way fate sometimes arrives quietly and without mercy. And without thinking, his body, broken or not, moved. He jammed the control stick on his chair forward. The motor whirred, wheels splashing water, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness like a sword. The car was sliding sideways now, metal screaming against asphalt. Ryan was on the ground. The others were yelling his name. Michael didn't feel fear. He didn't even think. He just heard his own heartbeat and the voice that had guided him through every fire he'd ever faced. "When you pass through the flames, I will be with you." He reached Ryan first. With all his strength, he leaned forward, pushing against the boy's shoulder, just enough to knock him out of the path of the car. The vehicle clipped the edge of Michael's chair, spinning it violently against the railing. Metal crunched, glass shattered. The world exploded in sound, then silence. Rain poured. Steam rose from the twisted car. The flashlight rolled across the pavement, its beam still glowing faintly through the storm. Ryan sat on the ground, shaking, his ears ringing, his vision blurred. He saw the wrecked wheelchair, the man who had pushed him clear, lying still against the guardrail. "Mr. Cooper!" he screamed. Ethan and Cole rushed over, kneeling beside him. Michael's eyes fluttered open. He looked at the boys, soaked, terrified, crying, and managed a faint smile. "You kids, okay?" Ryan choked out a sob. "You saved me. You—" Michael whispered, "That's what I do." Then his eyes closed. The rain fell harder, washing over everything, the wrecked car, the broken chair, the boys on their knees, as if the sky itself wept for what it had almost taken. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, closer. But in that moment, the world was just rain, breath, and silence. 3 boys, 1 man, and a bridge that would never feel the same again. The rain kept falling, relentless and cold, drenching the city and wrapping the bridge in a blur of water and light. The sound of sirens echoed faintly in the distance, but in that moment, time seemed to stand still. The world had narrowed to 1 man lying motionless beside a mangled wheelchair, and 3 boys who could barely breathe through their own shock. Ryan's hands trembled as he knelt beside Michael, his voice breaking as he whispered, "Please wake up, please." Ethan stood behind him, soaked to the bone, unable to speak. Cole's phone hung from his hand, recording light blinking red. But for once, he didn't care about the footage. He turned it off and threw it onto the wet pavement. None of this was entertainment anymore. Michael's head rested gently against the cold railing, rainwater streaming down his face. His chest rose and fell faintly, uneven but steady enough to give them hope. Ryan gripped his hand and shouted toward the road, "We need help! Somebody, please!" His voice cracked against the thunder. A car pulled over on the far side of the bridge. A woman jumped out, umbrella snapping backward in the wind as she ran toward them. She knelt beside Michael and checked for a pulse, her voice calm but urgent. "He's alive! Call 911 now!" Cole fumbled with his phone, his fingers shaking too much to dial. Ethan snatched it, pressing the emergency button. His voice was hoarse. "This is Ethan Miller. We're on the Lady Bird Bridge. There's been an accident. A man's hurt bad. Please hurry." The operator's voice came through, steady and practiced. "Stay with him. Help is on the way." Minutes later, the sirens grew louder until red and blue lights flashed across the slick road. EMTs rushed out with stretchers, shouting over the storm. One of them, a tall medic named Harris, recognized Michael instantly. He froze for half a second, disbelief flashing across his face. "Holy... That's Cooper," he said. "Michael Cooper." His partner frowned. "You know him?" Harris nodded, already kneeling to assess the injuries. "Yeah, he was one of us. Firefighter Lieutenant, Station 14. Saved half a family in that Walnut Creek fire years ago." Ethan heard the words, but couldn't process them. "Wait," he muttered. "He was a firefighter." Harris glanced up, eyes hard but kind. "He still is. Once a firefighter, always a firefighter. Now step back, son." The boys moved away, silent, watching as the medics stabilized Michael's neck, lifted him carefully onto the stretcher, and covered him with a thermal blanket. His chair, twisted and broken, was loaded into the back of the ambulance, as if it too were part of him, another piece of a long, hard journey. Before they closed the doors, Ryan called out, "He saved us! The car! It was coming! He pushed me out of the way!" His voice cracked, tears mixing with the rain. The medic met his eyes. "Then you make sure he knows that when he wakes up." The boys followed the ambulance to St. David's Medical Center, sitting in silence the whole way. The wipers thudded rhythmically against the windshield, but no one spoke. Every few seconds, lightning illuminated their faces, pale, wet, and frightened, the arrogance gone, replaced by something new. Shame and gratitude woven together. When they arrived, the nurses led them to the waiting area. The walls were white, the floor smelled faintly of disinfectant, and the fluorescent lights buzzed quietly above. The three boys sat in a row of plastic chairs, heads down. Cole broke the silence first. We made fun of him." His voice was barely audible. "We laughed at that guy, and he saved us." Ryan nodded, eyes red. "He didn't even think. He just moved." Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. "He could have let us die," he said, voice raw. "And after everything we did to him, he still—" He stopped mid-sentence, pressing a hand against his face. "What's wrong with us?" Ryan didn't answer. There were no excuses left. Hours passed. Nurses came and went. The storm outside finally began to fade, replaced by the steady rhythm of rain tapping against the windows. Then the double doors swung open, and a doctor stepped into the room, removing his cap. His face was calm but serious. "You boys were with Mr. Cooper." They all stood. "Yes, sir," Ethan said quickly. "Is he okay?" The doctor nodded slowly. "He's stable. A few broken ribs, some internal bruising, mild concussion, but he's going to make it. You should know. The impact could have been fatal if he hadn't reacted when he did. What he did probably saved all your lives." Ryan's voice wavered. "Can we see him?" "Not yet," the doctor said gently. "He's resting, but if you want to do something for him, you can pray." The boys exchanged glances. Cole whispered, "I don't even remember how." Ryan took a deep breath. "Then maybe now's a good time to start again." They sat in the hospital chapel, a small room tucked away near the elevators, dimly lit with a single stained glass window that glowed softly even under the storm. The scent of candle wax filled the air. Ryan knelt at the front, folding his hands awkwardly. "God, I don't really know what I'm doing," he whispered. But please, let him be okay. He didn't deserve any of what we did. And if he walks out of this, I swear we'll make it right." Ethan stood behind him, arms crossed, trying to hide how much his eyes burned. "He's not even family," he muttered. Ryan turned slightly. "He is now." For once, Ethan didn't argue. He just stared at the flickering candlelight until his jaw unclenched and his heart, for the first time in years, began to soften. By morning, the rain had stopped. The city smelled like renewal, wet asphalt, clean air, and the faint sweetness of trees after a storm. Michael woke slowly, his vision blurry at first, then clearing to the sight of sunlight spilling through hospital blinds. The room was quiet except for the soft beeping of machines. He blinked, trying to move, wincing at the sharp ache in his ribs. A nurse appeared beside him, smiling. "Easy, Mr. Cooper. You're in the hospital. You've been through quite a night." Michael's voice came out hoarse. "The boys, are they okay?" She nodded. "They're fine. You saved them." He closed his eyes and exhaled deeply. "Good. That's good." The nurse hesitated. "They've been here all night, haven't left the waiting room." Michael smiled faintly. Then maybe they learned something worth staying for. When the doctor finally let them visit, the boys entered the room slowly. Michael looked up, his face pale but his eyes bright. Ethan spoke first. "We didn't know who you were." Michael's smile was soft. "You don't have to know someone to be kind to them." Cole's voice cracked. "You saved us, man. We treated you like garbage, and you still—" He stopped, choking up. Michael reached out, his hand trembling slightly as he rested it on Cole's arm. "You're young. You made mistakes, but grace doesn't keep score. It just gives you another chance." Ryan wiped his eyes. "We don't deserve that." Michael shook his head. "None of us do. That's the beauty of it." They stayed for hours, listening as Michael told stories about his firefighting days, the people he'd rescued, the things he'd lost, and how he'd found faith again in the ashes. He didn't preach. He didn't dramatize. He just spoke with honesty, letting the weight of truth fill the silence between words. When he finished, he smiled and said, "Don't waste what was spared. Make it count." The boys nodded, and something in their eyes changed, the kind of change that doesn't fade once it starts. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, shining on the hospital windows. The city of Austin moved on as if nothing had happened, but for 3 boys and 1 man, the world was never the same again. Michael closed his eyes, exhausted but peaceful. He whispered, "Thank you, Lord." Lesson delivered, and somewhere deep inside them, Ethan, Cole, and Ryan each whispered their own silent prayer, one of gratitude, one of forgiveness, and one of promise. They didn't know it yet, but that night on the bridge would become the line dividing who they were from who they'd become. For 3 days, the hospital room stayed quiet, except for the rhythmic sound of machines. The nurses came and went, changing IV bags and checking monitors, but the man in the bed remained still, peaceful, almost as if he were resting after finishing a long day's work. Outside, the world had moved on from the storm. Austin's skies were blue again, the air clean and cool, and the bridge where everything had happened had already been washed by city crews. The only signs of that night were a bent railing and a few streaks of scraped metal that would soon be painted over. But for 3 boys, nothing had been washed away. Ethan, Cole, and Ryan visited every afternoon after school. They didn't talk much. Sometimes they just sat by the window of the waiting area, doing homework or pretending to. Sometimes they read the same newspaper story about local firefighter-turned-hero saves teenagers in bridge accident. The article used words like bravery, sacrifice, and selflessness. None of them could read those words without feeling a sting in their chest. Cole had stopped posting online completely. His phone stayed in his pocket now. Ethan hadn't been to a single party since that night. And Ryan started walking to the community center after school, helping out the volunteers who had once worked beside Michael. He cleaned tables, stacked boxes, and listened to the older folks talk about Coach Mike, the man who never asked for help but gave it freely. Every story made him realize just how little they had known about the person they'd mocked. One afternoon, Ryan found himself standing in front of the old bulletin board in the center's hallway. Dozens of pictures covered it, snapshots of CPR classes, fundraisers, holiday dinners. In almost every photo, Michael was there somewhere, always smiling, always helping someone else shine. At the bottom corner of the board, a small framed quote caught Ryan's attention. The paper was yellowed from time, but the handwriting was neat. "Service isn't what you do when people are watching. It's what you become when nobody is. M.C." Ryan stood there for a long time, reading it again and again, before whispering, "Yeah, I get that now." Meanwhile, Ethan's father had started noticing the change too. The loud, confident teenager who used to storm through the house now spent most evenings sitting quietly in the backyard. One night, his father came out and sat beside him. "You've been quiet lately," he said. Ethan shrugged. "Just thinking." "About what?" Ethan hesitated. "About a guy who saved my life, a guy I treated like trash." His father frowned, unsure what to say. "You can't change what's done, son, but you can honor it." Ethan nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's the plan." 3 days after the accident, Michael woke up. It was early morning. The sunlight filtered through the blinds, warm and soft against the sterile walls. He blinked slowly, adjusting to the light, then looked around the room. The smell of antiseptic, the soft hum of machines, all familiar to a man who'd spent months in hospitals once before. He smiled faintly. "Guess I'm back." The nurse noticed and hurried to his bedside. "Well, look who decided to join us again," she said with a grin. Michael's voice was low but calm. "How long was I out?" 3 days, she said. "You've had quite an adventure." He smiled, eyes glinting with gentle humor. "That's one way to put it." After she checked his vitals, she told him there were visitors waiting, 3 of them. Michael chuckled softly. "Let me guess. Teenagers with bad decisions and good hearts." The nurse laughed. "You could say that." When the boys entered, they froze at the sight of him sitting upright, eyes open and smiling. Michael's voice was steady but warm. "Well, look who's still alive." Ethan stepped forward first, guilt written all over his face. "You shouldn't be joking right now, sir. Michael raised a hand. "If I stop joking, I start crying. I prefer the first option." That broke the tension. The boys laughed, awkwardly at first, then genuinely. Ryan spoke next, his voice trembling. "You saved me. I would have been the one hit. I don't even know what to say." Michael looked at him kindly. "You just did. You're here. That's enough." Cole rubbed the back of his neck. "We don't get it, man." "Why'd you do it? After everything we said, after the way we treated you?" Michael paused, thinking, then said softly, "Because when you see someone about to get hurt, you don't stop to measure who deserves saving. You just move." Ethan swallowed hard. "You could have died." Michael nodded. "Wouldn't be the first time I came close." The room fell silent. After a while, Michael motioned toward the chair near his bed. "Sit down, boys. Tell me what you've been up to while I've been sleeping my beauty sleep." They laughed, and slowly the heaviness lifted. They talked for hours about school, life, fear, regret. Michael listened like he always did, not judging, just hearing. At one point, he said something that stayed with them forever. "You know," he said, "most people spend their whole lives trying to prove they're strong, but real strength doesn't make noise. It forgives quietly. It helps without being asked. It keeps showing up, Ryan whispered. "That's you." Michael smiled. "No, that's who you can be." Over the next week, they visited every day. They brought flowers from Mary's cafe, magazines, and even fixed the small Bluetooth speaker by his bed so he could listen to his old gospel playlist. The nurses began calling them his boys. Ethan helped organize a fundraiser at school to cover part of Michael's medical expenses. Cole designed flyers for it, and Ryan convinced the community center to host the event. When Mary heard about it, she offered free coffee for every donation. The news spread fast. Within days, local businesses joined in. Firefighters from Station 14 donated equipment, and people who had never even met Michael showed up to give. On the day of the fundraiser, Michael arrived in his chair, weak but smiling, the bandage still visible under his shirt. The room erupted in applause. He looked around at the faces, old, young, black, white, rich, poor, and said quietly, "I guess I'm the one being rescued now." Everyone laughed, but many wiped away tears too. Later that evening, as the event wound down, Michael found the three boys sitting outside near the parking lot, tired but happy. The sun was setting behind the city skyline, painting the sky in gold and rose. He rolled up beside them and said, "Beautiful, isn't it?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah, feels different now." Michael smiled. "That's because you're looking at it with clean hearts." Cole chuckled. "Still feels weird being called a hero at school, though. They keep saying we helped save you." Michael laughed softly. "Well, in a way you did. You reminded me that purpose doesn't retire. And maybe I reminded you that mercy isn't weakness." Ryan looked at him, voice low but full of emotion. "You reminded us what a man really is." Michael nodded slowly. "Then we're even." That night, back in his apartment, Michael sat by the window again, the same view of the city lights stretching toward the horizon. But something was different. A new warmth filled his chest. He whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for letting me stay long enough to see hearts change." Outside, the bridge glowed faintly under the streetlights, the water below calm and glassy. The storm had left scars, bent metal, broken concrete, but it had also left something beautiful, new beginnings. A week later, the boys returned to school. They still laughed, still joked, still lived like teenagers. But there was a depth to them now, something unspoken, but felt. Teachers noticed, friends noticed, even strangers could tell. When people asked what changed, they never gave details. They just said, "We met someone who reminded us what matters." And every Friday, after classes ended, they went together to visit the community center, to help, to serve, and to carry forward the light of a man who had once been invisible, but now had become unforgettable. Autumn came early that year in Austin. The air cooled, the skies softened, and the city carried a quiet calm that only comes after storms, the kind that changes more than just the weather. For Michael Cooper, life was slower now, but fuller. Each morning he woke before sunrise, said a short prayer of gratitude, and looked at the wheelchair parked beside his bed, not as a cage, but as an instrument. A reminder that the things meant to limit us often end up leading us exactly where we were supposed to go. And every morning, just as he rolled out into the world, he found the same three faces waiting for him: Ethan, Cole, and Ryan, his unlikely disciples, now part of his routine as naturally as his first cup of coffee. They walked with him to Mary's coffee spot, opening the door before he reached it, greeting everyone inside, and pulling a few tables together so he could fit easily. Mary called them the Sunrise Crew. Ethan laughed at that. "Because we're early," Mary winked. "Because you remind folks that light always comes back after dark." Michael grinned. She's not wrong. Those mornings were different now. No one laughed at Michael anymore. People waved, strangers offered to buy his coffee, and kids whispered stories about the man who saved 3 boys on the bridge. But Michael never let the story stay about him. Whenever people brought it up, he'd smile and say, "The real story isn't who got saved, it's who changed." At Bridgeview High, that change was obvious. Ethan joined the volunteer club, something nobody saw coming. He organized monthly cleanup drives, raised money for the fire department, and even spoke in an assembly about responsibility. Cole stopped filming pranks and started filming people's stories. The cafeteria lady who'd worked there for 20 years, the janitor who put 5 kids through college, the teacher who stayed late every day to help struggling students. His short videos spread across social media, earning comments like, "This gave me faith in people again." And Ryan, the quiet one, found his voice. He became the kind of friend who defended others, who noticed when someone was sitting alone, who stayed late to tutor kids who needed help. The 3 of them were different now, not perfect, but honest. Not trying to impress, but to improve. The community noticed. At the Austin Community Center, Michael had started a new program called Hands That Help. It was simple. Anyone, no matter their background or ability, could volunteer 1 hour a week to help someone else. No sign-ups, no pressure, just service. The first week, only a few people came. By the 3rd week, there were dozens. By the 2nd month, the center couldn't hold them all. And every Saturday, at the heart of it, sat Michael, leading, laughing, and teaching with the same quiet wisdom that had once disarmed 3 reckless boys. One Saturday morning, Ethan arrived early to set up tables. He was stacking chairs when Michael rolled in. "Morning, champ," Michael said. Ethan smiled. "Morning, sir, you're early," Michael chuckled. "Habit of a firefighter. You never want to show up after the flames start." Ethan laughed. "Guess I learned that the hard way." Michael nodded slowly. "And you'll keep learning. That's the trick. Stay teachable, no matter how many bridges you cross." Ethan looked at him, thoughtful. "You ever regret it? What happened that night?" Michael's eyes softened. "Not for a second. Some fires are meant to burn away what doesn't matter." Ethan smiled faintly. "Like pride," Michael grinned. "Exactly." Later that day, Cole arrived carrying a small camera. "Hey, Mr. Cooper," he said, "mind if I record a bit today? I'm putting together a short film about the center, calling it Grace in Motion." Michael laughed. "You got the title right." Cole smiled. "It's about people like you." Michael shook his head. "Then make sure it's about people like us." That "us" stuck with Cole. He realized that Michael never separated himself from others, not from the kids, not from the broken, not even from those who'd hurt him. To him, everyone belonged. In the afternoons, Ryan helped out at the fire station, where Michael used to work. The old firefighters treated him like family. They showed him how to operate hoses, handle safety drills, and run community demos. One day, Captain Harris, the same medic from the bridge that night, clapped Ryan on the shoulder and said, "You know, Cooper talks about you boys all the time." Ryan smiled shyly. "He does." "Oh yeah," Harris said. "Says you remind him what hope looks like when it grows legs." Ryan laughed. "Guess that makes us his legs now." Harris grinned. "Then you better keep walking straight." By winter, word about Coach Mike and his story had spread beyond Austin. Local news ran a feature, then national outlets picked it up, a segment titled "The Man Who Saved the Boys Who Mocked Him." When the reporter asked Michael how it felt to be called a hero twice in one lifetime, he smiled and said, "I'm no hero. Heroes save people once. Grace saves them every day." The interviewer paused. "What do you mean by that?" Michael replied, "Forgiveness doesn't happen in a moment. It happens every time you choose to love instead of hate. Every time you show up when it'd be easier not to." The clip went viral. Millions watched it. Thousands commented things like, "I needed to hear this today." But Michael didn't care about numbers. He cared about hearts. A few weeks later, on a Sunday morning, The boys convinced Michael to visit their church. He hadn't been there before. A small community church on the east side, filled with families, music, and laughter. When the pastor introduced him from the pulpit, the congregation stood in applause. Michael smiled awkwardly and whispered, "I didn't do all this to get clapped at." The pastor chuckled, "Then tell them why you did." Michael wheeled forward slowly, took the microphone and said, "I've lived most of my life trying to pull people out of fires. Literal ones, back when I was a firefighter, and invisible ones ever since. But the truth is, I've been rescued more times than I can count. By grace, by second chances, by people who believed in me even when I didn't. And I think maybe that's all any of us are supposed to do. Just keep rescuing each other, however we can." The room was silent for a moment, then filled with quiet amens. Ethan, Cole, and Ryan sat in the front row, proud but humble, eyes wet. That night, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Michael sat on the same bridge where it had all happened. The city lights glowed beneath the water, calm and golden. Ethan leaned against the railing beside him. "It's weird being back here," he said. "I can still hear the rain when I close my eyes." Michael smiled. "I can still hear your screams." Ethan laughed. "Fair enough." They both grew quiet for a while, listening to the hum of cars passing behind them. "You ever think," Ethan said softly, "how different life would be if that night hadn't happened?" Michael nodded. "All the time. But I figure God doesn't waste storms. They water the seeds we didn't know we planted." Ethan looked down at the water, thoughtful. "You really believe that?" Michael smiled. "I don't just believe it. I'm living proof." As the months passed, the bond between them only deepened. They weren't just the boys he saved anymore. They were family. Every Christmas, they gathered at Mary's Cafe to decorate cookies and hand out meals to people experiencing homelessness. Every New Year's Eve, they met on the bridge, not to remember the accident, but to celebrate what came after. And every time they met someone struggling, a lonely kid, a tired parent, a man down on his luck, they shared the same lesson Michael had given them that day in the hospital. Don't waste what was spared. Make it count. By the following spring, the community center had expanded. New volunteers, new programs, new faces. A mural now covered the side of the building, painted by Cole and a group of local artists. It showed a bridge under a stormy sky and a man in a wheelchair reaching out toward three figures standing in the rain. Above it, in large letters, were the words, "Grace Moves." When Michael saw it for the first time, he just stared quietly, eyes glistening. "You boys," he whispered. "You really did make it count." Ryan smiled. "We had a good teacher." Michael chuckled softly. "No, son. You had a second chance, and you took it." By the time spring turned to summer, Austin had a new rhythm. The air was warm again, the days longer, and in every corner of the city, people seemed to carry themselves with a little more kindness, as if the story of one man and one night on a bridge had somehow softened an entire community. The news had moved on long ago. The headlines faded, the interviews stopped, but what remained was stronger than any broadcast, the quiet ripple of changed hearts. At the community center, volunteers doubled, donations increased. People who had never met Michael Cooper began showing up just to help, to listen, or sometimes just to sit beside him for a few minutes. When asked why, they all said some version of the same thing. "I heard about what he did. I wanted to feel what makes a person like that do it." Michael never quite knew what to say. He'd smile and tell them, "You don't need to understand me, just pass it on." One afternoon, the mayor's office called. They wanted to honor Michael at the city's annual Heroes of Austin event, a ceremony recognizing those who had made a lasting impact on the community. When the invitation arrived, Michael chuckled. Heroes of Austin? Sounds like a comic book. Ethan grinned. You're literally the cover. But Michael hesitated. I don't know, boys. I didn't do any of this for applause. Ryan smiled. Then don't see it as applause. See it as permission to let others be inspired. Michael thought about that for a moment, then nodded. All right, but only if you three come with me, Cole laughed. Deal. Just don't make us wear suits. Michael smiled. You'll live. The night of the ceremony arrived warm and clear. The auditorium buzzed with energy. Local officials, families, firefighters, teachers, all gathered under the soft glow of stage lights. Michael sat quietly near the front, dressed in a dark jacket and a clean white shirt. His chair gleamed under the lights, polished by Ethan earlier that day. When the announcer called his name, the audience stood in applause. He rolled forward slowly, waving shyly, eyes lowering in humility. The applause lasted longer than he expected. He could see tears in people's eyes, strangers who somehow felt like family now. When he reached the podium, he paused, took a breath, and smiled. Thank you, he began. But if you came here tonight to hear about a man who saved 3 boys, you might be disappointed, because that story's not about me. It's about grace, the kind that saves us all, over and over again. The room grew still. He continued, people like to talk about miracles like they're magic, sudden, impossible, beyond reach. But sometimes a miracle is just a change of heart. Sometimes it's a boy deciding to stop laughing at people and start helping them. Sometimes it's 3 of them. He turned slightly toward where Ethan, Cole, and Ryan sat in the front row. You boys remind me that redemption doesn't need permission. You just have to want it bad enough to walk a different way. Ethan wiped his eyes. Ryan bowed his head. Cole held up his camera, tears blurring the lens. Michael smiled faintly. I'm not standing tonight, but I hope you see there are more ways to stand than using your legs. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Don't let what you lost stop you from giving what you have. The crowd rose in a standing ovation, and in that sea of applause, the 3 boys who once mocked him clapped the loudest, not out of pity, but out of love. In the days that followed, the story spread again, not through the news this time, but through people. Churches mentioned him in sermons. Schools used his speech as a lesson on empathy. Businesses adopted his quote, "Don't let what you lost stop you from giving what you have," and printed it on their walls. Cole's documentary, Grace in Motion, premiered online a month later. It was simple. No narration, no fancy effects, just real moments. Michael teaching a child how to perform CPR, Ethan helping at a fire drill, Ryan stacking food boxes, and dozens of volunteers laughing together under the Texas sun. At the end of the film, a single sentence appeared on screen. Sometimes the loudest redemption is lived, not spoken. The video went viral again, reaching millions across the country. Emails poured into the community center from people as far as New York, Chicago, Seattle. Some said the story made them call their parents. Others said it made them forgive someone. A few even said it saved their life. Michael didn't read them all, but the ones he did always made him smile. One afternoon, a group of firefighters from Station 14 visited the center. They surprised Michael with a custom plaque, a piece of metal cut from the same engine he used to ride. It read, "For the man who never stopped answering the call." Michael ran his fingers over the engraving. His eyes welled with tears. You boys didn't have to do this. Captain Harris smiled. We did. Because you remind us that courage doesn't retire. Michael laughed softly. Guess I'll have to start charging for all these compliments. Ethan grinned. Sorry, sir, Grace doesn't pay bills. They all laughed, and for a moment the room felt weightless, filled with the kind of joy that comes only from gratitude. As the months passed, Michael's health began to show signs of strain. The accident had left deeper scars than anyone realized. His strength waned, his body tired easily, but his spirit never faltered. He refused to slow down. "God didn't leave me here to rest," he joked. "He left me here to work." Ethan often helped him get around, pushing his chair when the motor faltered. Ryan handled the scheduling at the center, and Cole recorded short messages from Michael to post on social media, small reminders about life, faith, and kindness. One video, filmed on a quiet afternoon, showed Michael sitting by the river. The water sparkled behind him. He looked into the camera and said, "If you're watching this, maybe life's been hard. Maybe you've lost more than you thought you could bear, but hear me. What breaks you can also build you. You just have to let grace in." That video became one of the most shared clips of the year. One day, a letter arrived at the center. It was from a man named Luis Hernandez, a former firefighter who had been struggling with depression after a career-ending injury. He wrote, "I was ready to give up until I saw your story. You reminded me that my life still matters. Even without the uniform, I got help. I'm walking again, and I'm volunteering with kids now. Thank you for reminding me that I wasn't done." Michael read it twice, then smiled. "There it is again," he whispered. "The ripple." He folded the letter carefully and placed it in his Bible between the pages of Isaiah 43. That fall, the community center hosted its biggest event yet, the first annual Grace Moves Festival, a celebration of service, gratitude, and unity. Thousands came. Families brought food, firefighters grilled burgers, musicians played, and people shared stories of how kindness had changed their lives. Michael arrived late, exhausted but glowing. When he rolled in, the crowd parted, and spontaneous applause filled the park. Ryan took the microphone and spoke first. This all started because one man refused to let bitterness win. He didn't just save our lives, he gave them direction. And now, we want to honor him the only way that feels right. He turned toward Michael and smiled, by promising to keep moving Grace forward. Michael's eyes glistened. He lifted the microphone slowly, his voice steady but full of emotion. "You already have," he said, as the sun set behind the city, casting long golden rays over the lake. Ethan, Cole, and Ryan stood beside him. Together, they looked at the water, the same water that had once reflected thunder and chaos, now calm, still, and shining. Michael broke the silence. "Funny, isn't it? How the same bridge that almost ended us became the one that connected us." Ryan nodded. "You think God planned it that way?" Michael smiled. "I think he plans everything that way, turns our worst nights into someone else's dawn." Cole lifted his camera, recording quietly. Ethan chuckled. "Always filming, huh?" Cole grinned. "Some stories are worth remembering." Michael looked at them, his eyes soft and proud. "Then promise me this, when I'm gone, don't just tell the story, live it." They nodded, tears in their eyes. "We will. Time has a way of moving quietly when life is full. Days turn into months, months into years, and before you realize it, the things that once felt like miracles become memories that warm you instead of ache. For Michael Cooper, the years after the storm were the gentlest of his life. He no longer chased anything, not recognition, not approval, not even time. He just lived each day as it came, filling it with small acts of kindness that rippled further than he'd ever know. His body grew weaker, but his heart only grew stronger. He often joked that he was trading horsepower for holy power. The boys, now young men, never left his side. Ethan started working for the Austin Fire Department, just like Michael once did. He passed every test with flying colors and carried a small tag inside his helmet, engraved with 3 words, "Make it count." It was the reminder Michael had given him that day in the hospital, the sentence that had redefined his life. Cole became a filmmaker. His short documentary Grace Moves won several awards, but he didn't care about trophies. He cared about the people who wrote to him afterward. those who said the film helped them forgive someone or believe again in goodness. Ryan became a counselor for at-risk youth. He spent his days helping kids who reminded him of his younger self. Lost, angry, searching for meaning, he told them, "You don't need to be perfect to be changed. You just need one moment of grace." All three of them stayed connected to Michael, visiting him every week, sometimes bringing dinner, sometimes just sitting in silence as he watched the sunset from his small balcony overlooking the city. On his 71st birthday, they surprised him with a gift, a wooden plaque engraved with the words, "For the man who taught us how to walk without legs and how to live without pride." Michael laughed when he read it. "You boys always did have a way with words," Ethan grinned. "We learned from the best." They ate cake, told old stories, and watched the city lights flicker on one by one. The air smelled like spring, fresh rain, blooming flowers, and something eternal in the air. Michael looked at them, eyes soft, voice steady. "You know," he said, "when I was younger, I thought saving lives meant running into burning buildings. Turns out, sometimes it just means showing up, again and again, until someone believes they're worth showing up for." Ryan's voice trembled. "You showed up for us." Michael smiled. "And now you do it for others. That's how you keep the fire burning." A few months later, Michael's health began to fade. The doctors called it complications from his old injuries. He called it the body clock just winding down. He refused to be afraid. He told Ethan once, "When you've faced fire, death doesn't scare you. You just make sure the people behind you still know where the water is." They all visited often, bringing laughter, music, and memories with them. Mary from the cafe stopped by too, bringing his favorite coffee, extra sweet. Captain Harris from Station 14 came one last time, handing Michael his old firefighter badge polished like new. "Thought you might want this back," Harris said. Michael smiled faintly. "Keep it. I'm already where I belong." One quiet evening, as the summer sun slipped low behind the city skyline, Michael sat on his balcony with the three men he had once saved. The sky glowed orange and pink, and the air was perfectly still. The kind of evening that makes you feel heaven might be just one breath away. Michael leaned back, closed his eyes for a moment, and said softly, "Boys, if I'm not around one day, don't mourn too long. Promise me that." Cole shook his head. "Don't say that," Michael smiled gently. "We don't get to choose how long we stay. We just get to choose how well we live while we're here. And I've lived well, because of you." Ryan wiped his eyes. "No, Mr. Cooper, because of you," Michael chuckled. "Maybe because of both." They all laughed through the tears. Then, in that golden silence, he whispered, "God's been good to me, more than I deserve. And I hope when I go, you'll keep spreading what he gave me, grace in motion." Ethan nodded, voice thick. "We will. I swear we will." A few weeks later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Michael passed peacefully in his sleep. The nurse who found him said he looked like he was dreaming, a faint smile still resting on his face. The city mourned. Church bells rang. Flags at the fire station flew at half-mast, and hundreds gathered at the community center for his memorial. They came from everywhere: firefighters, students, business owners, homeless neighbors, church members, even tourists who had once seen his story online. On the stage sat the same three men who had once been boys, standing on a bridge in the rain. Ethan spoke first. "He saved us, not just from that car, but from the people we were becoming. He didn't punish us. He didn't preach. He just lived in a way that made you want to be better. And because of him, we are." Ryan followed, his voice calm but full of emotion. "He taught me that grace isn't weakness. It's strength under control. He showed me that forgiveness changes more than punishment ever could. And I know he's still teaching, just in a better classroom now. Cole went last. He didn't read from notes. He just looked at the crowd, then at the mural behind them, the same one they had painted years ago, showing Michael on the bridge. "When I started filming stories, I thought I was capturing moments," he said. "But Michael taught me that what matters most isn't what you record. It's what you remember. And I'll never forget the way he made everyone feel like they mattered." The audience stood in silence. Many cried openly. After the service, they carried Michael's chair, polished, empty, and draped with his firefighter jacket, across the stage one last time. The sound of bagpipes filled the air, soft and haunting. Then the crowd sang quietly, a hymn that Michael loved, Amazing Grace. The words drifted upward, gentle and pure. "I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see." And for everyone there, it felt like those words had come to life through the man they were honoring. Weeks passed, but the legacy didn't fade. The community center renamed its main hall the Cooper Wing, and a bronze plaque was placed at the entrance with his favorite quote, "Don't let what you lost stop you from giving what you have." Ethan took over the leadership of Hands That Help, turning it into a city-wide initiative. Ryan launched a mentorship program in local schools, calling it the Bridge Project, and Cole kept telling the story, through films, through interviews, through the quiet honesty of his camera. Each of them lived differently now, not because of guilt, but because gratitude had taken root where shame once lived. Every year, on the anniversary of the storm, they met at the same bridge. The city had repaired it, but they always said it never looked quite the same. It had a presence now, sacred somehow. They would stand by the railing, toss flowers into the water, and watch them drift away. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they didn't. Silence was enough. One year, Ethan brought his little daughter. She was 4, with Michael's same calm eyes. She pointed at the water and asked, "Daddy, who was he?" Ethan smiled. "He was a man who taught me what being brave really means." She thought for a moment. Was he a firefighter? Ethan nodded. He was fire, the kind that lights other people's hearts. Years later, when people in Austin passed by that bridge, they would see a small bronze plaque fixed to the railing. It read, "In memory of Michael Cooper, 1955-2025. He rolled through fire and rain and left light behind. Some stopped to read it, some took pictures. But every now and then, someone would pause longer, close their eyes, and smile, as if they somehow knew the story. And somewhere beyond the horizon, where storms never reach and fire never burns, Michael Cooper's spirit watched over them all. He'd probably laugh if he saw how far his story had gone. He never thought of himself as a hero. He was just a man who believed that grace was stronger than pain, and that even a broken body could carry an unbreakable soul. If he could speak one last time, he would probably say something simple, something like, "Keep moving, keep loving, and never forget, every bridge you cross can lead someone else home."